The impossible challenge. The vast chamber of the galactic conclave fell silent as Commander Elena Chen stepped onto the speaking platform. Her simple uniform, adorned only with Earth's blue and green insignia, stood in stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial attire of the assembled alien representatives. Behind her, Dr. Marcus Way fidgeted nervously, his hands clutching a data tablet so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The humans wish to address the conclave regarding the Nexus Gate crisis, announced the speaker, a tall, elongated being whose crystalline skin refracted the chamber's light into dancing patterns. Elena took a deep breath. This was humanity's first formal appearance before the full conclave in the 43 years since Earth had joined the galactic community. Most species waited centuries before requesting such an audience. Honorable members of the conclave, Elena began, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her stomach. We come to offer a solution to the Nexus Gate collapse. A wave of murmuring swept through the chamber, rippling outward from the center like stones dropped in a pond. Some representatives leaned forward with interest, while others made gestures that Elena had learned to recognize as their species' equivalent of derisive laughter. The speaker raised a multi-jointed limb for silence. Commander Chen, the destruction of the Nexus Gate network is indeed catastrophic. 37 systems remain isolated from the galactic community. But what could Earth possibly contribute to this crisis? Dr. Way stepped forward, his scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming his discomfort with the spotlight. We've analyzed the fragments of ancient builder technology recovered from the collapse sites. We believe we can reconstruct the gates. This time, the chamber erupted. Representatives from 300 worlds spoke at once in dozens of languages. The translation units embedded behind Elena's ears struggled to keep pace with the overlapping voices. Impossible. The humans barely have interstellar travel. Even the Mithrani couldn't restore the gates, and they've had spaceflight for 50 millennia. The speaker struck a resonant crystal rod against the dais. The sound cut through the chaos, gradually restoring order to the chamber. Ambassador Krex of the Voidborn Dominion rose from his seat. His species, the Voidborn, were known for their advanced technology and their equally advanced sense of superiority. Krex's skin had the deep purple coloration of all Voidborn, but the intricate bioluminescent patterns pulsing across his face marked him as a high-ranking official. With all respect to our human friends, Krex said, his voice silky but edged with contempt, this is preposterous. Your species barely left your solar system 2 centuries ago. The Nexus Gates require understanding physics your scientists haven't even theorized yet. Elena kept her expression neutral. We're aware of the challenge, Ambassador. Are you? Krex's mouth stretched into what passed for a smile among the Voidborn. The last team that attempted repairs lost an entire research station when their calculations failed. A station, Commander. 8,000 dead. Elena nodded solemnly. We mourn those losses with you, but our approach is different. Different how? Asked a representative from the Lumini Collective, their bioluminescent tendrils quivering with curiosity. Dr. White activated his tablet, projecting a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed a modified design of the Nexus Gate, with several key components highlighted in different colors. Instead of trying to recreate the ancient builder's technology exactly, Way explained, we've developed a hybrid system that combines what we understand of their methods with new principles derived from our own scientific tradition. Elena noticed that even Krex was watching with reluctant interest as Y manipulated the display, showing different components and energy flows. We've already successfully tested a microportal that remained stable for 7 minutes and 13 seconds, Y continued. The principle works. Now it's just a matter of scaling up. This revelation caused another stir. A microportal was still far from a full Nexus Gate, but it was more than anyone had achieved since the collapse. The speaker looked thoughtful. And you have documentation of this test. Full records, Elena confirmed, verified by independent observers from the Lumini Science Academy. The representative from the Lumini nodded in confirmation, causing Krex's facial patterns to pulse in what Elena recognized as irritation. Even if your test was successful, Krex said, scaling up from a microportal to a nexus gate is not simply a matter of building it larger. The energy requirements alone would drain your planet's entire power grid. We've accounted for that, Y replied calmly. Our design requires significantly less energy than the original gates. It's less powerful, but more stable. For the next hour, Y answered increasingly technical questions from the conclave. Elena watched with pride as he handled each challenge with confidence. His direct explanations seemed to impress many of the representatives, even those initially skeptical. Finally, the speaker called for a brief recess to consider the human proposal. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Krex approached Elena and Y. An interesting performance, he said quietly. But when your project fails, and it will fail, remember that you were warned. Some technologies are beyond certain species. Know your place in the galaxy, humans. Elena met his gaze steadily. Our place is wherever we choose to make it. Ambassador. Krex's bioluminescent patterns flashed in angry patterns. We shall see. When the conclave reconvened, the speaker announced their decision. The conclave grants provisional approval for the Human Nexus Gate reconstruction project. You will receive limited access to the ancient builder archives and permission to work at the primary collapse site. However, the speaker added, the conclave accepts no responsibility for any consequences of your attempt. Elena bowed slightly. We understand. Thank you for your trust. Not trust, corrected the speaker. Necessity. If there is even a small chance you might succeed where others have failed, we must allow the attempt. As they left the chamber, Y whispered to Elena, did we just commit to something impossible? Elena watched as Krex and several other representatives huddled together, casting glances in their direction. Probably, she admitted. But if humans waited for guarantees of success, we'd never have left Earth in the first place. 6 months later, Elena stood in the observation dome of Frontier Station, watching as another supply ship docked with the massive space station orbiting the dead star where the primary Nexus Gate had once stood. Now only fragments of the ancient structure remained, scattered across space like cosmic debris. Shipment from Mars colony, said a voice behind her. More quantum stabilizers for Lab 4. Elena turned to see Y approaching, his once pristine lab coat now stained and rumpled from days of continuous work. Did they send the special alloys we requested? Elena asked. We nodded. And something else. 20 new engineers and scientists, including Dr. Sofia Alvarez. Elena's eyes widened. The quantum physicist. I thought she refused to join the project. She changed her mind. We grinned. Apparently, she said she couldn't miss witnessing either the greatest engineering disaster or miracle of the century. Elena laughed. Dr. Alvarez was famous throughout human space for her revolutionary theories about dimensional folding. Most established scientists thought her ideas were too radical, but Elena had studied her work closely. Alvarez's papers had provided the foundation for their new approach to the Nexus Gates. When does she arrive? She's on the ship now, along with our newest observer from the Voidborn Dominion. Elena's smile faded. Another spy from Krex. Of course. This one's called Nexari. Supposed to be a technical advisor, but really just wants to watch us fail up close. The station had become home to over 500 humans and nearly 100 aliens from various worlds. Some came to help, offering knowledge or skills. Others, like Krex's people, came to observe and report back on the humans' inevitable failure. In Lab 3, Elena found Dr. Alvarez already at work. She was younger than Elena had expected, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and intense eyes that darted quickly between multiple holographic displays. Commander Chen, Alvarez called out when she noticed Elena. Finally, come look at what your team has created. Elena approached cautiously. Alvarez had a reputation for brilliance matched only by her bluntness. Is there a problem, Doctor? Problem? Yes, several, Alvarez pointed at the complex diagrams floating around her. Your approach to the quantum field stabilizer is fundamentally flawed. You're trying to force coherence using computational brute force. Elena felt her face grow warm. We've made significant progress. Progress towards spectacular failure, Alvarez said, but without malice. She pulled up new diagrams. The ancient builders didn't think like this. They didn't force technology to work. They found the natural flows of space-time and guided them. We joined them, frowning at Alvarez's criticism. With respect, Doctor, we don't have their knowledge. No, but we have our own knowledge. Alvarez tapped her temple. Humans think differently. That's our advantage. For the next hour, Alvarez explained her theories, drawing equations in the air with her hands and occasionally cursing when words failed to convey her concepts. Despite her initial defensiveness, Elena found herself fascinated. So you're saying we need to make the Nexus Gate adaptive rather than fixed? Elena asked finally. Exactly. Alvarez's eyes lit up. Not just a machine, but a system that can respond to the natural fluctuations of space-time. Our physics may be younger than the Voidborns, but we've always excelled at creating adaptive systems. From behind them came a smooth, almost musical voice. Fascinating theory. Completely unsupported by evidence, of course. They turned to see Nexeri, the new observer from the Voidborn Dominion. Like all Voidborn, she had deep purple skin and a tall, slender build. Her facial patterns were simpler than Krex's, marking her lower rank. Evidence is what we're creating here, Alvarez replied sharply. Nexeri made a gesture that translated roughly as polite disbelief. The Dominion explored adaptive technological systems millennia ago. We found them inherently unstable and abandoned the approach. Then you explored them incorrectly, Alvarez said bluntly. Elena stepped between them. Dr. Alvarez's theories are just one approach we're investigating. We value the Dominion's input. Of course, Nexeri nodded, clearly not believing her. I look forward to observing your unique methods. Ambassador Krex is most interested in your progress. After she glided away, Alvarez muttered, I bet he is. Over the next few weeks, the station hummed with activity. Elena organized her team into specialized groups, each working on separate components of the massive project. To the surprise of their alien observers, the humans didn't work exclusively in scientific laboratories. Some teams included artists and designers who helped shape components that simply felt right. What is the purpose of this? Asked Nexeri one day, watching as a sculptor shaped a piece of specialized quantum-responsive metal. Intuitive design, Elena explained. Some relationships between matter and energy can be felt rather than calculated. Nexeri looked skeptical. This is not science. It's human science, Wei said, joining them. We've always mixed art and engineering. Throughout our history, our greatest scientists were often artists too. At the 3-month mark, they tested the first major component, a dimensional stabilizer that would eventually help hold the Nexus Gate open. To everyone's surprise, including Elena's, it worked on the first attempt, generating a perfect containment field. That night, the team celebrated in the common area with music and drinks from a dozen worlds. One small step, Wei said, raising his glass to Elena. About 1,000 more to go, she replied, but she was smiling. Across the room, Alvarez was arguing enthusiastically with scientists from the Lumini Collective, their bioluminescent tendrils waving as they debated complex theoretical principles. Other aliens had joined the celebration too, curious about human festivities. Only Nexeri and the other Voidborn observers kept their distance, watching with unreadable expressions, their facial patterns pulsing in complex sequences Elena couldn't interpret. 2 weeks later, disaster struck. The second major component, a quantum waveguide, failed catastrophically during testing. The explosion was contained but destroyed months of work. Impossible, Wei whispered, staring at the smoking ruins. The simulations were perfect. Alvarez examined the damaged pieces. This wasn't a design failure. The materials were compromised. Elena frowned. Compromised? How? The molecular structure is wrong. Alvarez held up a twisted piece of metal. This isn't what we specified. It's similar but not the same. Elena felt a chill despite the lab's warm temperature. Sabotage. Later that night, she met Wei and Alvarez in her private quarters where they could speak without being monitored. Security footage shows Nexari in the materials lab 3 days ago, Elena said quietly. No record of why she was there. You think the Voidborn are sabotaging us? Wei asked. I think someone doesn't want us to succeed. Elena's voice was grim. The question is what we do about it. Alvarez thought for a moment. We don't confront them. Not yet. Let them think they've set us back months. And meanwhile, Elena asked. A slow smile spread across Alvarez's face. We change our approach. I've been developing a completely different way to build the field generator, something the Voidborn would never expect. We looked uncertain. Your theories are untested. Exactly. Alvarez's eyes shone with determination. They're watching for conventional methods. Let's try something they'd never anticipate. Something so crazy it just might work. Something human, Elena said with a grim smile. Outside the station, the broken remains of the ancient builder's Nexus Gate continued their silent orbit around the dead star. Soon, if Elena's team succeeded, those fragments would serve a new purpose, not rebuilt as they were, but transformed into something that had never existed before, something they said no one could build. Defying the impossible. Elena couldn't sleep. For the 4th night in a row, strange patterns danced behind her eyelids whenever she tried to rest. She finally gave up, pushed herself out of her narrow bed, and floated to the workstation in her quarters. Lights, she called, and the room brightened. Elena pulled up the latest designs for the Nexus Gate project. After the sabotage 3 months ago, they had switched to Dr. Alvarez's unconventional approach. Progress had been steady but slow. Yet something still felt wrong. Elena stared at the designs until her vision blurred. Then, just as she was about to give up, something clicked in her mind. The patterns from her dreams overlaid the schematics, and suddenly she saw it. That's it, she whispered. Her fingers flew across the interface, making changes, connecting systems in ways no one had tried before. That's what we've been missing. When morning came, or what passed for morning on a space station, Elena called an emergency meeting of the core team. Wei arrived first, looking concerned. What's wrong? Another sabotage attempt. No, something better. Elena could barely contain her excitement. I figured it out, Marcus. The Nexus Gate isn't just technology. It responds to consciousness. Dr. Alvarez arrived next, her hair disheveled from working through the night. Show me, she demanded immediately. Elena displayed her new designs on the main screen. See these connection points. They're not power conduits or data transfers. They're more like synapses. The ancient builders didn't just build a machine. They created something that could think. Alvarez studied the designs, muttering to herself. After several minutes of intense scrutiny, she looked up with a grin that made her look years younger. Of course, she said. It's so obvious now. We weren't thinking alien enough. What does this mean for the project? Wei asked, struggling to follow their reasoning. Elena took a deep breath. It means we need to change everything. We've been trying to build a machine, but we need to grow a partner. The new approach stunned the alien observers. When Elena presented her theory to the full station staff, Nexari immediately contacted Ambassador Krex. Within days, Krex himself arrived at the station. This is madness, Krex said after Elena finished explaining. You're suggesting the Nexus Gate has consciousness. Not human consciousness, Elena clarified. Something different. More like how a coral reef knows how to grow or how quantum particles seem to know about each other across vast distances. Quantum particles don't bend space and time, Krex said coldly. Dr. Alvarez stepped forward. Maybe not on their own, Ambassador, but the universe is stranger than any of us know. Despite Krex's objections, Alina's team began rebuilding their components using the new approach. They no longer forced the exotic materials into predetermined shapes. Instead, they created conditions where the materials could form themselves. The results were immediate and stunning. Components that had failed repeatedly now functioned perfectly. Structures that had been unstable held firm. Energy flowed more efficiently through systems that seemed to adjust themselves to changing conditions. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. More alien scientists began arriving at the station, not to observe, but to help. A group from the aquatic world of Marina brought special crystalline materials that responded to electromagnetic thought patterns. Engineers from the gas giant Orcs shared techniques for communicating with non-biological entities. "This is not what we expected," said a Lumini scientist, watching as a crystal formation grew itself into a perfect signal amplifier. "Humans continue to surprise us," Wei smiled. In her private log, Alina recorded, Day 214. "The Nexus Gate components are showing signs of what I can only call preference. They work better when certain people handle them. They respond to music. Dr. Alvarez insists on playing Earth classical compositions in Lab 5, and the crystalline structures there grow more quickly when Mozart is playing. I can't explain it scientifically, but I can't deny the results either." 3 weeks later, they were ready to test the first major section of the new Nexus Gate design. The test chamber was crowded with humans and aliens, all watching anxiously as Elena initiated the startup sequence. "Power at 10%, she called out. "Field stabilizers online." The air in the center of the chamber began to shimmer. A small disk of darkness appeared, no larger than a dinner plate. "It's working," Wei whispered. "Power at 25%, Elena continued. "Quantum guide engaging." The disk grew larger, now the size of a small window. Through it, they could see nothing. Perfect darkness except for tiny points of light that might have been stars. "Power at 50%. The portal expanded again. Now they could definitely see stars on the other side, but in a pattern no one recognized. "Where is that?" someone asked. "Not where," Alvarez said quietly. "When? We're looking at stars as they were arranged millions of years ago." Elena checked her instruments. "The portal is stable, holding at 50% power." For 10 minutes, the portal remained open. Instruments showed it was a genuine connection through space-time, not just an image. When Elena finally shut it down, the room erupted in cheers and the alien equivalent of applause. Even Krex looked impressed, though he tried to hide it. "A small portal under controlled conditions is still far from a functional Nexus Gate," he said. "But it's more than anyone else has achieved since the collapse," Wei pointed out. Krex had no answer to that. That night, as the station celebrated, Elena sat alone in the observation dome, staring at the broken pieces of the original Nexus Gate. Those ancient fragments were beginning to make sense to her now. "We found her there. You should be celebrating," he said, handing her a drink. "You're the hero of the hour." Elena took the drink but didn't sip it. "We're still so far from finished, Marcus. A working portal is one thing. A stable Nexus Gate that can transport ships across the galaxy is something else entirely. But for the first time, it actually seems possible." Elena nodded slowly. "Yes, and that's what worries me." "What do you mean?" Ambassador Krex wasn't angry today. He was scared. Elena turned to face Wei. "We're succeeding, Marcus, and that's exactly what some people don't want." Wei's expression grew serious. "You think they'll try to stop us again?" "I know they will. And next time, they'll be desperate." As if to confirm her fears, an alert chimed on her communicator. Elena checked it and frowned. "What is it?" Wei asked. "Security alert. Someone accessed the main power controls without authorization." Elena stood up quickly. "It's starting already." They hurried from the observation dome, leaving behind the scattered remains of the ancient builder's Nexus Gate still orbiting the dead star. Those ancient fragments had once connected the galaxy. Soon, if Alina was right, they would do so again, but in a new way, a human way, if they could stay alive long enough to finish the job. The next morning, Alina and Wei called a station-wide security meeting. All section heads gathered in the main conference room, their faces showing a mix of excitement from yesterday's success and concern about the unauthorized access to the power systems. "We've changed all access codes," said Commander Rodriguez, the head of security. He was a former military officer with a serious face and eyes that missed nothing. "And I've doubled the guards on critical systems." "That's not enough," Alina said. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept after discovering the security breach. "Whoever did this has high-level knowledge of our systems." We nodded. "We need to consider that we have a serious saboteur on board. Maybe more than one." Dr. Alvarez, looking rumpled as always, spoke up. "The timing is not a coincidence. We make our first real progress, and suddenly someone tries to access the power core." Krex, who had insisted on attending as the Voidborn representative, made a dismissive gesture. "Perhaps one of your own scientists was simply running an unauthorized test. Humans are not known for following protocols." "The access codes used were diplomatic level," Rodriguez replied flatly, "like the ones issued to observer teams." All eyes turned to Krex, whose purple skin seemed to darken slightly. "Are you accusing the Voidborn Dominion of sabotage?" he asked, his voice dangerously smooth. "We're not accusing anyone yet," Alina said quickly, "but we're increasing security around all critical systems." After the meeting, Alina pulled Wei and Alvarez aside. "We need proof before we make any accusations against Krex or the Voidborn. The political consequences could be serious." "I know," Alvarez sighed. "But I also know they don't want us to succeed." Work continued on the Nexus Gate with new urgency. Alina's team had proven their approach worked, but scaling up from a small test portal to a full Nexus Gate presented enormous challenges. The materials needed to be perfect, the energy flows precisely controlled. 3 days after the security breach, they were ready to test the second major component, the spatial anchor that would keep the gate fixed in space. Without it, a functioning gate might drift, creating a moving hole in space-time that could tear apart anything in its path. "Power level stable," called out one of the engineers as the test began. "Anchor field forming." Alina watched the readings carefully. Everything looked perfect. The anchor field expanded smoothly, creating an invisible bubble of stabilized space-time. "Test successful," she announced, allowing herself a small smile. Dr. Alvarez nodded in approval. "Now we have 2 of the 3 main components working. Only the matter-energy converter remains. That was the most difficult piece, the system that would allow solid objects like ships to pass through the gate safely. The ancient builders had somehow solved the problem of converting matter to energy and back again without destroying it. No modern civilization had been able to replicate that feat. Unknown to the rest of the team, Alina had been working on a radical solution. That night, she asked Alvarez to meet her in her private lab. "I need to show you something," she said, closing the door behind her. "But you can't tell anyone else yet." Alvarez raised her eyebrows but nodded. Alina activated a small device on her workbench. A tiny field of shimmering energy appeared above it. "Put your hand in," she instructed. Alvarez hesitated. "What will happen?" "Just trust me." Slowly, Alvarez extended her hand into the field. Her fingers disappeared, but she showed no sign of pain. "I can still feel my fingers," she said, surprised. "But I can't see them." Alina smiled. "Now pull your hand back." Alvarez did, and her fingers reappeared, completely unchanged. "Remarkable," she whispered. "You've solved the matter-energy problem." "Not completely," Alina admitted. "This is just a small-scale test, and it only works on living tissue so far." Alvarez looked at her sharply. "Living tissue, you mean?" "Yes. The gate responds differently to living things than to inanimate objects. It's like it recognizes life." Alvarez paced the small lab, thinking hard. This changes everything. If the gate itself is semi-living, and it recognizes other living things, then we need to approach the final component as a form of communication, not just technology. Their excitement was cut short by a station-wide alarm. Red lights flashed, and a computerized voice announced, "Emergency in Section 12. All personnel evacuate immediately." Section 12 was the main power core. Elena and Alvarez raced through the corridors, joining the flow of crew members heading toward the emergency. When they reached Section 12, they found Y already there, directing the response team. "What happened?" Elena asked, breathless from running. Way's face was grim. "Explosion in the coolant system. 3 engineers were inside when it happened." Elena felt cold. "Are they?" We nodded silently. The blast had been contained, but the engineers had no chance. Engineers in protective suits were already inside the damaged section, assessing the damage. One came out and reported to Way. "It wasn't an accident," he said. "The coolant regulator was tampered with. Someone reprogrammed it to build up pressure until it exploded." Elena felt sick. Sabotage was one thing, but this was murder. 3 people were dead because someone wanted to stop their project. "Do we have security footage?" Elena asked. The engineer shook his head. "The cameras in that section went offline 10 minutes before the explosion. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." Later that night, Elena, Way, and Rodriguez reviewed what little evidence they had. The programming changes to the coolant system required high-level engineering knowledge, Rodriguez said, and diplomatic access codes were used again. "Krex?" Elena asked. "No, he was in a meeting with representatives from the Lumini when it happened. Multiple witnesses confirm it." "Then who?" Rodriguez pulled up a security image on his tablet. "This is from a corridor camera outside Section 12, taken 30 minutes before the explosion." The image showed Nexuri moving quickly down the corridor. "She claimed she was just taking a routine tour," Rodriguez said. "But this is the only time she's ever been recorded in that section of the station." Elena's expression hardened. "We need to confront her." "Not yet," Alvarez said. Both looked at her in surprise. "We don't have absolute proof, and if we accuse a void-born diplomat directly, the Dominion could pull all their support from the galactic community. So we just let them get away with murder." Way asked angrily. "No," Elena said. "We finish the Nexus Gate. That's the best revenge. And while we do it, we set a trap." The next day, Elena called a station-wide meeting. Everyone attended, including Krex, Nexari, and the other alien observers. The mood was somber after the deaths of the 3 engineers. "Yesterday's tragedy has set our work back," Elena announced. "The power core damage will take at least 2 weeks to repair. During that time, all Nexus Gate testing is suspended." She could see the slight smile of satisfaction on Nexuri's face. However, Elena continued, "We will use this time to review our designs and improve security. The Nexus Gate project will continue." After the meeting, Elena met secretly with her core team. "We're not really stopping," she told them. "That was for Krex and Nexuri's benefit. We're moving the critical equipment to the backup lab in Section 8, and we're accelerating the timeline." "Accelerating?" Alvarez asked, surprised. "But without full power. We'll use the emergency generators, and I've figured out a way to connect the partially completed gate directly to the station's core systems. It's risky, but it might work." "What about Krex and Nexari?" Way asked. Elena's eyes flashed with determination. "They think they've won. Let them think that. Meanwhile, we'll be ready for their next move." As the team dispersed to begin the secret work, Elena stayed behind with Y. "This is dangerous," he said quietly. "If they discover what we're doing, they'll try to stop us." "I'm counting on it," Elena finished. "This time, we'll be ready." Time was running out, and everyone knew it. They had been working around the clock for 5 days in the hidden lab of Section 8, away from prying eyes. Life support is failing in Sections 3 through 7, reported Rodriguez over the comm system. Emergency systems are holding, but not for long. Elena wiped sweat from her forehead. The station's temperature had been rising steadily as power systems failed one by one. What had started as sabotage to the main power core had spread like a virus through the station's systems. "How much longer do we have?" Wei asked, his voice tight with tension. 4 hours, maybe less, Rodriguez replied. Oxygen recyclers are at 40% efficiency and dropping. We looked at Elena. We're not going to make it, are we? Elena stared at the half-completed Nexus gate in the center of the lab. It looked nothing like the ancient design. Where the original had been all metal and crystal, theirs was a strange mix of technology and something almost organic. Parts of it pulsed with light like a heartbeat. "We have to try," she said. "It's not just about us anymore." Dr. Alvarez, who had barely slept in days, nodded in agreement. "The gate is responding better than expected. It wants to work." We might have smiled at the odd phrasing if the situation hadn't been so desperate. The idea of the gate wanting anything still seemed strange, but he'd seen enough in recent weeks to stop questioning it. "What do you need?" he asked Elena. "Time," she said simply. "And power. All you can give me." We nodded. "You'll have it." As he left to coordinate with the remaining engineering teams, Elena turned to Alvarez. "We need to connect the main components now, before the final power loss." Alvarez hesitated. "The matter-energy converter isn't fully tested. We don't know if it will work at full scale." "We're out of options," Elena said. "It's now or never." Together, they began the final assembly of the Nexus gate. As they worked, Elena could feel the station deteriorating around them. The lights flickered. The air grew thinner. Distant explosions occasionally shook the walls as systems overloaded and failed. 3 hours later, they were ready. "All personnel to Section 8, Elena announced over the station-wide comm. Emergency evacuation protocol." One by one, the surviving station crew members arrived at the hidden lab, looking exhausted and frightened. Last to arrive were Wei and Rodriguez. "Station integrity at critical levels," Rodriguez reported. "We have maybe 30 minutes before complete system failure." Elena addressed the gathered crowd. "The Nexus gate is our only chance now. We're going to open it to the nearest inhabited system.